The clock on our kitchen wall said it was nearly midnight, and I remember watching the pendulum swing because I could not look at his face. Our anniversary supper had gone cold on the table hours ago. The lamp was burning low, and across from me sat my husband, holding out his open hand, waiting for me to give him the thing he was allowed to take on this one night of the year. Before I go any further, I'm Martha, and this is Hannah, the Amish girl. I grew up old order Amish in Lancaster County, and now I share the stories we were never allowed to speak out loud. If you value hearing the truth about Amish life from someone who actually lived it, subscribe and like this video and tell me in the comments before today. Did you even know an Amish husband was allowed to take anything at all? Let me explain what I mean, because I know that hand held open across the table sounds like something darker than it was and something stranger than you would guess. In my community, a marriage was not a thing you celebrated. There was no anniversary dinner out, no card, no gift wrapped in paper. To mark the day you were wed with fuss and attention would have edged toward hosmut, pride, which in the Amish world is the greatest sin there is. So most couples let the day pass in silence, the way they let most tender things pass in silence. But there was one custom in my church district, unwritten, unspoken outside the home, that a husband was permitted one thing on the anniversary of his wedding. He was allowed to take back a promise, one promise his wife had made him during the year and had broken, and he was allowed to name it out loud and take it and be owed it made right. That was the tradition. That was what the open hand meant. I was 19 when I married Amos. In my community, that was not shocking. It was ordinary. School ends at the 8th grade. At 14, your books close forever, and after that, your learning is practical. Cooking for the frolics, sewing plain dresses, tending the little ones, helping in the barn. By 16, you are going to the Sunday singings with the youth group, and that is where courtship quietly begins. Mine lasted less than half a year. A boy gives you buggy rides home. He starts visiting on Sunday evenings, and within months everyone assumes the engagement, and once you are baptized, and I was there, is no turning back without shunning and the loss of your family. So I knew what marriage was supposed to look like from the outside. What I did not know was what happened behind the closed door of it. Nobody prepares you for that. You are expected to feel your way through it with no map. And that is the part that still unsettles me all these years later. Amos was not a cruel man. I need you to hold on to that as I tell you this, because it matters more than anything else. I will say he was quiet, serious, with big hands rough from the work of the fields. He could repair a harness in the dark and pull a calf at 3 o'clock in the morning without complaint. And on the day we married, on hard wooden benches in my parents' house in front of nearly 300 people, the bishop preached about Galassin height, yielding, about wives submitting, about the husband leading and the wife following. I remember thinking, I can bake pies for days. I can milk cows before the sun comes up. But I have no idea what this man is going to ask of me when the door closes. Our first anniversary came the following October, and I did not even remember the custom until Amos sat down at the table that night after the little ones were asleep and folded his hands and waited. There is a part of this story I cannot tell you here. Not on this platform, not under these rules. The algorithm has limits, and I have learned exactly where they are. So I wrote the rest down instead. Slowly, without the softening, without the cuts, everything the camera is not permitted to show. The book is called The Ordinong They Never Wrote Down, 28 pages of what plain life looks like from the inside of it. The link is in the first comment of this video. That is where the part I could not say out loud lives. Now, let me tell you what happened at that table. I want to be completely honest with you. I had made him a promise that year, and I had broken it. In the spring, when the money was thin and the seed cost more than we had, I had promised Amos I would not go back to my mother for help. Amos had his pride, the way all of them do, and to take money from a wife's family was a shame he could not carry. But the baby needed shoes, and winter was coming, and I went behind his back, and I took $40 from my mother's hand in her kitchen, and I said nothing. He knew. Of course he knew. In an Amish community, there are no secrets, only things not yet spoken. And on our anniversary, when the custom allowed him to take back one broken promise and name it and be made whole, he opened his hand across the table, and he said quietly, "Martha, give it back to me." I thought he meant the money. I sat there with my heart hammering, trying to work out how I would find $40 we did not have. And I started to cry because I did not have it, and I had failed him. And I did not know what taking it back was going to cost me. He watched me cry for a long moment, and then he said something I have thought about every single day since. He said, "Not the money, the promise. I am taking back the promise itself. From this night, you are allowed to go to your mother. You are allowed to ask for help. I release you from it. That is the thing I am taking. I am taking away the rule I put on you. And I want you to understand what that meant because it took me years of therapy after I left to fully understand it myself. The custom was never about a husband taking something from his wife. That is what it looked like from the outside. That is what I feared it was. What it actually was, in its oldest and truest form, was a husband being allowed one night a year to release his wife from a burden he had placed on her. To take back a rule, to take back a demand, to unmake one thing he had bound her with. And Amos took it twice that night. Because after he released me from the promise about my mother, he sat very still, and the lamp threw long shadows on the wall, and the horses shifted in the barn outside, and he said, "There is one more." His voice broke on it. He said, "The night we married, I told you a wife yields and a husband leads because the bishop said it, and my father said it, and I did not know any other words. I am taking that back too. I do not want you beneath me. I want you beside me. I am too tired to be led or to lead. I just want us to carry it together." I sat in that kitchen and I wept in a way I had never wept in my life. Not from sorrow, from the sheer relief of being handed back to myself, one piece at a time, by a man who had been given no more freedom to say those words than I had been given to hear them. Here is what nobody tells you. The next morning, I woke before dawn and put on my apron, and there were cows to milk, and a stove to light, and a child to feed. And no one asked what had passed between us in the night, and no one ever would. In Amish culture, the tender things are private to the point of silence. What happens between a husband and wife stays sealed inside that house forever. My friend Rachel married at 18, 2 years before me. Years later, in her pantry, while we needed bread, careful that no one overheard, she told me about her own anniversary. Her husband had opened his hand across their table too, but her husband did not release her from anything. He used the custom the way the fearful ones use it. He took back a kindness. He had once told her she could sing while she worked. That year he took it back. He named it and he took it, and she did not sing in her own kitchen again for 11 years. That is when I understood something deeper about the tradition I had been raised in. The custom itself was not good or evil. It was a tool, and it did whatever was in the hand that held it. In a gentle hand, it was a night of freedom given. In a hard hand, it was a night of freedom taken. And the ordinong, the unwritten code that governed every hour of our lives, never once said which kind of man you would be given. It left teenage girls to lie in the dark and pray the way I had prayed that the man climbing into their life saw them as a person and not as a thing to be ruled. I don't look back on my marriage to Amos with bitterness. We were young. We were uninformed. Nobody had given either of us the words for tenderness or the permission to use them. But inside a system that rushed us and silenced us, there were two young people trying to love each other the only way they knew how. There were hard nights later, nights that felt mechanical, always in the dark, always quiet. But there were also nights when he held me and we talked honestly about fear and money and whether we were good enough. I can hold both of those truths at once. The system failed us, and still we were gentle with each other inside of it. When I left at 24, the cost came fast. The shunning, the phone calls that were never answered, the letters returned unopened. My mother's door closed to me, the same mother whose $40 had bought my child a pair of winter shoes. In therapy, I learned words I had never heard spoken out loud: autonomy, boundaries, consent. I learned that a husband holding an open hand across a table was never the tradition's real danger. The danger was that the whole thing ran on what one man decided to do with power that was handed to him and never questioned. My therapist said something to me that I have carried every day since. She said, "Control does not always look like a locked door. Sometimes it looks like a custom so old that nobody remembers to ask whether it is kind. The Amish world gave me things I will carry for the rest of my life. A community so deep, it has a texture to it, a work ethic that has held me up through every hard year since I walked away, a faith complicated, wounded, rebuilt, but real. But there is no scripture that makes one person the keeper of another person's freedom. There is no God I believe in now who built a woman with a whole soul of her own and then meant for her to sit at a table once a year and wait to see whether it would be given to her or taken. Amos took twice that night. And the reason I can tell you this story at all, the reason it did not break me, is that the thing he chose to take was the very thing that was binding me. But I have to sit here and be honest with you. That was luck. That was the man, not the custom. Rachel got the same table and the same open hand and the same silence around it, and she did not sing for 11 years. The tradition did not protect her. Nothing did. If you grew up in a world where your own freedom was something another person kept in their hand and gave back to you only when they chose to, I see you. If you ever sat waiting to learn what would be taken from you and had no words for the fear of it, you are not alone. If you want to read the version of this story that YouTube will not allow, the full pages are in the ordnung they never wrote down. First comment of this video, and that is everything. Choose your freedoms wisely.